This is a story about a person that's an immigrant working for $4.95 at a concession stand in a movie theater to now making six figures as a real estate agent and an investor. I wanted to sit down and talk about where I started from all the way to where I am now. And I'm hoping to share my information, especially people that have not grown up in the US, that are immigrant, or people that have never invested and thought about real estate as well. And also to talk about how I started my life. I'm originally from Ethiopia, and I came to the US in 1987. I was 9 years old, 9 years old. And when I came here, I lived with my sister. I was blessed enough to have her to take care of me as I came to the US. First place I went in the US was Los Angeles. So my early childhood was in LA, not such a great neighborhood. So it was very different from the little memory I have of my country growing up. As a young kid, it's not a place where you want to grow up, where you're always inside the house, not going outside, or if the helicopter goes, you see the light outside and you have to go hide in one of the bedrooms because it could be a shooting happening or a drive-by. So it was kind of scary, but being young, it didn't really register. It just felt normal because that's where you were living in, and that's day to day. At a certain point, my sister and her husband decided to move to Seattle. When I came to Seattle, a lot of things kind of opened up, and I can see a growth happening within me. As soon as I reached 16 and a half, just to get out of the house, I start working at a movie theater as just a person carrying tickets, cleaning, making popcorns at the concession stand. And it was an amazing experience just because at such a young age, and I had a great manager that was like a mentor to me that showed me dedication, working hard, and being a leader. Unknowingly, I was absorbing the way he was managing and leading us. But finishing up high school, graduating from high school, and got my associate degree for electronics. After 13 years of working there, I met a person, and she had owned properties back then, and we used to go help her out. She would buy a house that was torn up, and she will fix it. Sometime we'll go help her out, tear down the wall, the kitchen. Back then there was like no Bigger Pockets or podcast and YouTube. The strategy now people talk about in the BRRRR strategy, and that's what she was doing. As working at the movie theaters, I was renting an apartment. My strategy at that time was I would rent a 1-bedroom, 1-bath apartment. I had a couple of plates, a couple of forks, a bed, a couch. My strategy as soon as the lease is up is to move to another apartment that was like cheaper. So I did that for 4 years, where I was literally moving from one apartment to another apartment, thinking I'm saving money at that time, $50 or $100, whatever it was. But one time when I was moving, that good friend of mine, she asked me, why am I not buying? I was working and I'm not buying a house. And obviously, like everybody else's answer is always, I can't afford the house. I can't afford to buy. But while we were sitting there, she said, hey, I'm going to help you buy a house. You can afford a house. I'm going to get you my lender and realtor, and we're going to go buy you a house. And I didn't believe her. We talked about it. And the next morning, I get a phone call. It was her agent saying, hey, how's it going? We're going to meet up today, look at some house, and we have a lender that you need to talk to. And I answered the phone. I was like, who are you again? For some reason that day, I woke up, dressed, and met with her. We kind of looked at houses, but really ended up at a Wells Fargo branch where I talked to the loan officer, and I got approved for $160 or $180. Once I got approved, we looked at, I believe, 3 houses. She encouraged me on one property, and I was kind of not arguing with her, but just saying, no, I'd rather buy this property. And they're both trying to stop me. My vision was to do what she was doing, buying these really damaged house, fixing them up and renting it. But obviously I was not ready for that big of a project. we ended up buying a property for $150,000. It's a 1947 house. It's about 1,400 square foot. So we fixed the upstairs and remodeled it. And I was still working at the movie theater. This was a 3-bedroom and 1-bath house with a basement. And the upstairs were completely remodeled. One of my friends that was working at the movie theater wanted to rent a room. As we're talking, he said, hey, you bought a house. Do you mind if I rent one of the rooms? And I was single. I was like, yeah, why not? If you want to pay $350. He ended up renting that room. And then his friend, heard that and asked if he can rent another room. Rented that room out for another $350. And that's kind of when the picture kind of start clearing up. Once that kind of cleared up, I decided to work on the basement. Again, with my friend, we tore the whole place downstairs, renovated it, put a bathroom in there, extra space, flooring, and I moved myself in the basement to rent out the last room that was upstairs. So now all 3 bedrooms are rented. That whole mortgage, I was living mortgage free and getting extra money. I've seen my friend do a lot, but then little me that was working at a minimum wage back then, being able to afford a house, fix it, rent out the upstairs and live downstairs. You hear about it a lot now, house hacking and and do this, do that. But back then it was just, you just did it and it kind of worked and you kept it to yourself because you just did it. For me, it was great. I was living mortgage free, getting a little bit of extra money, kept working and living there. And at a certain time, that movie theater job that I was working, things got changed, basically was kind of shaking everybody out that's been there for a long time so they can rehire new employees at a lower rate, whatever that might be. But it was a great experience for me at that time because I was kind of stuck doing the same thing and not growing my potential. I actually was very frustrated. That was the most darkest time of my life because it was something I loved doing, but things were changing and I didn't know how to adjust to it. What I didn't see was I was not growing as a person, as financially, being stuck doing the same thing for a long time. When this happened, it actually pushed me and I was upset. I was mad. I decided to quit. I decided to say, you know what? I'm going to travel. I'm going to travel to go back to Ethiopia, where I have not been over 20 years. When I went back to Ethiopia, the house was already rented. I didn't have to worry about a mortgage. I was getting a little cash flow off of it. That was, I think, the turn of my life where a lot of things changed. To know where I was from first, to understand my culture. But that time I spent in Ethiopia, it kind of woke me up, and it was actually a really tough time. Start having panic attack, going back home, thousands of people, a different culture, being away from what I've done for almost 20 some odd years. I start getting homesick. I almost changed my ticket, after 2 weeks of staying there. I couldn't handle it. It was something different. My body, my mind couldn't adjust for it. And I remember talking to my sister and saying, hey, I need to go to the Ethiopian Airlines because great to see you guys, but I need to change my flight and go back home. But while I was there, a good friend of mine that I grew up and went to high school and was living in China. And I got an email from him while I was there and asked me, can you come to China and visit? I was already in Ethiopia and I said, yeah, let's do it. While I was there, I flew to China, visited him. And again, going to China, seeing a whole different world again, completely different world. It was like in mainland China, very small province. I could say nobody spoke English. So it was fun to get to see him, different food, being away. But then I went back to Ethiopia after seeing that. So it was just an amazing experience to see the way people live. It opened up my eye that the world was not that big as I thought it was. It's actually very small, that we can travel and visit people and see a different way of living versus the way I was living, which is nothing's wrong with it, but I was kind of staying still in the same position, same place, not growing mentally, but going to these places kind of woke me up. I even have many nights of, back then I didn't know what they were. They were like panic attacks because my body and my mind couldn't take it. There's so many changes, just like that, traveling to Africa and then traveling to China and going back to Africa again. It was too much of a change for me and my body. Once I was back to Africa, stayed there. I didn't change my flight, stuck with it. I started enjoying the culture, when we start going to churches and start seeing families. I kind of calmed down. I don't remember how long I stayed, 4 weeks or whatever. I stayed there and flew back to the US. I came with a different mind. When I came back, I decided to pursue my electronic degree and trying to find a job. When I was working at the movie theater, I started at $4.95 as a 16 and a half year old. And after 13 years, I was making $17 an hour. And when I started pursuing my electronic degree, it was working for a communication company as a contractor. And out of the gate,